Welcome to my book release for Half the Story Has Never Been Told, my book about the history and methodology of propagandized mass opinion. But first, who am I and what is my book about? What is half the story that doesn't get told? Surely you can trust the news and the politicians to tell it straight, right? My name is Brel. I'm Greek, born in the 60s in South Africa, where I learned to read and write in English at a South African state school in apartheid South Africa. There I received a privileged white education in conservative religious racist conformity, and especially being taught why oppressive apartheid tyranny that feeds on the blood of children is a poor political choice that never works out well for anyone, ever. Apartheid tyranny and human rights offering opportunity for all cannot coexist, ever. After my fortunate and privileged racist religious education, I chose to reject those value studies and became a musician instead, in my efforts to raise the vibration of the planet, replacing books with stringed instruments, replacing memorizing biblical passages with song lyrics. Writing, though, has always been my passion. Writing and sharing information that I have proof-checked factually and experientially. Half the Story is not my first book. It's also not my first experience of living through apartheid terrorism. Although this past year has been the first time I watched a genocide TV reality show live on Al Jazeera. Daily, for over a year, horror after horror, unspeakable, horrific, inhumane barbarism unfolding with the cheerful approval of a Christian Zionist voter base who have the empathy and compassion to say they feel terrible about the million children's lives our bombs have ruined, but they condemn Hamas and they have to vote mass child murder genocide because otherwise Trump will win. They have to vote Zionist because they don't want to waste their vote voting for someone who is not Zionist. With so many interesting subjects to write about in the wonderful world of literature, why did I write about half the story? What makes this information relevant at this time, worth spending 10 months of 8-hour days of my time, worth you taking the time to read? Last year, on October 7, when news of the hostage-taking attack emerged, I knew exactly what would happen next, from the moment I first heard Biden speak. This is because I've already lived through the rise and fall of apartheid terrorism and seen the tradition of Goebbels-style gaslighting that rises exponentially when the curtain falls. Biden's first speech on October 8 might just as well have read, "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and watch our $100 billion of ordnance carpet bomb the children and hostages in Gaza, after which we will turn our attention to Lebanon, then Yemen, then Iran. Buckle up, it's going to be so great you'll vote for my team every time. God bless our troops." Because I have lived through the end of apartheid tyranny before, I have both nostalgia and familiarity available as a resource for shaping and sharing my opinions at this time. That's partly why I wrote Half the Story, to help my friends interested in my historical account of nationalism, Nazism, Zionism, religion, and apartheid. I have a more interesting motivation in writing this story. I'm a parent to 2 boys. I've twice experienced that fatherly responsibility of doing the best I can to protect a young child from harm and provide a safe cocoon of security to develop into. I cannot look at an image of a small boy, much like mine once were, exploded into small pieces, or worse still, partially exploded to live on without limbs, without wondering about the moral fiber of those who would commit such a crime against humanity. What is the pathology of this ideology that professes to be Christian, yet cheerfully defend their entitlement to mass murder children with joy? Then, soon after wondering that, realizing the reason this happens is because my government makes it happen, with the approval of the voting majority. Very soon after October 7, I saw the extent to which the Biden administration was sending 2,000-pound bunker-buster bombs to Palestine, knowing that every single child in Palestine is displaced, with the vast majority in tents. 17,000 Mark 84 2,000-pound bombs is what Biden sent to Palestine, knowing the Zionist Plan Dalet called for the ethnic cleanse and genocide of the Palestinian people, most of whom are children. It seemed somehow obvious to me that around 1 million kids in tents have no surface-to-air Iron Dome missile defense to protect them from terror. For this reason, I was concerned that my government sent $100 million F-35 stealth bombers and tens of thousands of enormous expensive bombs to drop on very young children who cannot begin to understand why we hate them so much we would debase our own humanity in this way. President Biden and Vice President Harris are the leader class responsible for dropping more bombs on the children of Palestine, as well as the hostages in Gaza, than all the bombs dropped in World War II combined, including the 2 nuclear bombs the US dropped on women and children in 1945. This is an unprecedented, excessive, illegal use of force against defenseless children in a deviant, greed-motivated expedient made worse by the liar leader class invoking God's will as their indemnifying justification for mass child murder. Rich old white men like Biden debase all humanity. That is a subplot in my book. I call it moral turpitude, in which an ideology that is predicated on the mass murder of children, the blood of an entire generation of children, is a noble cause for our government to invest hundreds of billions of dollars towards. We have some 44 million Americans experiencing food anxiety in 2024, and the Democrat Zionist Party has hundreds of billions to send for first blockade starving and then mass murdering millions of kids abroad. How legal is our government's genocide agenda? It's not as if this is a state of war protecting the belligerents by the Geneva Conventions. This criminality by our leader class never rises above the legal bar of mass child murder with premeditation. I was bemused by how Americans kept voting for this, truly bemused. The most common reply on those occasions when I asked, "But don't you care about the kids your vote kills?" is, "Of course I feel terrible about it, but you're not going to convince me not to vote Kamala." Growing up in South Africa during the Troubles there, I related to one specific opportunity above all others. That is, to speak up for the most vulnerable who are not able to speak up for themselves. In Africa, there is a wonderful wildlife resource: lions, elephants, giraffes, cheetah. Every thoughtful African-born person is aware of this amazing natural world. Conservation and protecting these animals who cannot speak for themselves becomes an unspoken duty for all African-born people. In this, I'm no exception. Imagine my horror then when I saw the floods of American trophy-hunting tourists who come to Africa to kill animals for fun, paying corrupt farmers fortunes to shoot wild animals behind fences with high-powered rifles and telescopic sights. Canned hunting. Animals behind fences sold for the American kill-thrill seekers, like the moron Trump progeny, Cocaine Laurel and Dimwit Hardy, posing with the big five they paid to slaughter from a safe distance, for that kill thrill. Let's get high and go shoot some baby elephants. This cult of killing adds value to the opportunity to hunt an entire family. I've seen brochures in South Africa attracting American trophy tourism, advertising a price for a 4-person elephant trophy hunt. For $20,000, you can bring the wife and kids to Africa to stand a safe distance away and then shoot a male bull, a female adult, and 2 little ones. American tourists, who incidentally are invariably Christians, pay these enormous amounts for the pleasure of hunting together as a family, family values, a family that kills together, gives thanks to Jesus together, then ship the carcasses back to the United States for their so-called trophy rooms. When I saw the extent of this growing industry in Africa, I felt disgusted and revolted. I saw these people, these Christian American trophy hunters, entitled to dominion over the animals as subhumans, debasing humanity, demonstrating a moral turpitude I found hard to understand. So I tried to get to the bottom of that pathology by researching this American Christian appetite for recreational killing. An animal behind a fence being lined up with a scope on a high-powered rifle and shot for fun can't report this inhumane misconduct because animals can't speak for themselves, and nor do they have any legal representation on their rights to exist. So I spent countless hours doing that, speaking for the voiceless victims who cannot speak for themselves. Speaking up for victims who cannot speak for themselves has become a common feature in my contribution towards making the planet a better place. That and making harmonious musical frequencies to raise the vibration on the planet, although that is a different video. When I saw Biden's first announcement declaring the genocide season open on October 8th, I imagined a 2-year-old baby boy in a tent in Palestine looking up to the sky. What's that movement in the distance? For a moment the boy might imagine he saw the hazy swish of an F-35 American stealth bomber, and then the metallic finned canister, that Mark 84 2,000-pound bunker buster Biden bomb plummeting downwards towards his tent. In that final thought a 2-year-old child is capable of that stage of neural development, I imagine he wouldn't really know what was about to happen next. But if he did, he might want to say a few final words directed towards those responsible for sending that F-35 and that 1-ton bomb to drop on his head, protected by no more than the iron dome of tent cloth. That thought, giving a voice to that helpless victim of such brazen, inhumane injustice, motivated me to write this book. My intention was to provide information based on my own experiences in this area of moral turpitude that might give that child's voice a place to be heard by those who don't yet know the consequences of their silence, who choose to vote for mass child murderers instead of voting for their arrest. In the case of many voters at this time, opinions on Zionism, religion, Nazism, nationalism, and mass child murder are not all equal. We all have the right to an opinion, and at this time we still have the freedom to express our opinions. That's as it should be in a free society. But that freedom now hangs by a slender thread for the same reason that people express opinions in which siding with the tyranny of evil men in the mass murder of 1 million children is their patriotic religious duty, and at the same time pass laws to persecute and silence any dissenting voice that challenges their moral right to mass murder as many babies as they choose, wherever and whenever they choose. Criticize our righteous genocide at your own peril, as 4,000 American students nursing injuries from Biden's black shirts can testify. That, then, is a flavor of what you might expect in my book, my opinion on the core issues in which the world finds itself poised at 15 seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock. Religion, indoctrination, propaganda, Nazism, Zionism and nationalism are component parts of how I choose to speak for that little 2-year-old boy who is not able to grow up and speak for himself, thanks to our version of democracy. Proportional democracy, in which 2.5% of the population are Jewish, but 99% of the government are Zionists. in an auction election in which it is plain the outcome is already known and has been known since AIPAC bought the Zionist White House, populating Congress with their elected representatives who write "finish them" on 2,000-pound bombs aimed at children in tents. In my opinion, if everyone knew what I know and share in this book, then we would not keep voting for Zionists to mass murder children in our name and tell the blind faith Christians it's God's will to pray for Israel. It seems as obvious to me today as it has done all of my life that mass murdering children is wrong, no matter how strongly you feel about apartheid and the right to be the chosen few. With this book, I welcome the opportunity to explain why to anyone still voting for the mass murder of children only because I know the reason they do it. Voting so counterintuitively for their own humanity as well as their own American sovereignty. Although I know about the decline in reading age in America and the decreasing attention span of the ADHD generation, happily, I also know there are many who can read or listen to audiobooks read for them, who want to know more about why the majority of Americans happily send billions in one-ton bombs to drop on children and then feel so terrible about it they vote for another Zionist 4 years of mass child murder. That's the reader base I hope will take on this opportunity to find out more from my book of opinions. Half the story is available in 4 formats: an e-book for cheap, a paperback that costs a bit more because Amazon charge more for that, a hardback that may one day be worth something as a collectible, and an audiobook in which I spent about a month narrating and editing all 21 hours this book comprises, all of which are available on Amazon, who provide a terrific distribution service, even though initially they blocked this book from release. I learned a great deal in the course of writing this book in the shadow of the news happening every day while I wrote. Who could have foreseen that the American government would win popular approval by the majority of voters who profess to be Christian by sending billions upon billions in bombs for daily use on children in tents? By carpet-bombing sovereign nations with American planes and American bombs, and then defending their right to do that as an election-winning policy, while passing laws to persecute protesters standing up for the rights of children to not be bombed by America's Christian Zionist leader class. Whatever happens next, and in my book you'll be able to see what that is most likely to be, if you read this book, at least you won't be able to say, "I didn't know." That is my message from the 2-year-old boy who is never going to be able to deliver it himself, thanks to our Bombs from America putting paid to his hopes for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The information covered is encyclopedic, covering a wide time period and a wide selection of behaviors and ideologies. Having taken me many decades to accumulate in a factual and experientially verified way, I recommend starting this process, reading or listening to the audiobook, with a strong coffee and an internet connection to research the facts for yourself. Every opinion I share has a verifiable, credible source. My best hope is that you fact-check my story at your own pace, and then form your own opinions. The spoiler alert is this: there has never been a time when mass murdering children is legal. Eventually, Americans arrive at the right decision after exhausting all possibilities. Whatever side you find yourself on currently, the oppressor or the oppressed, I hope at least one reader finds the words in my book from that 2-year-old child helps bring an end to this toxic culture of mass child murder for the right to exist. That 0.125% of the planet should control the vast majority of wealth, political influence, and military strength of the entire planet reliant on the constant slaughter of children for their proclaimed right to exist, is both illegal and untenable. There can be no harmony on a lawless planet, only humanity hanging by a cross of iron, waiting for the Samson option. I hope my book convinces you to find out why. Thank you for listening.